Welcome to In Depth with Academia. I'm Richard Price, founder and CEO of Academia.edu, and today we're diving into a fascinating topic, one that honestly raises some big questions about spirituality, literature, and the search for meaning in our modern world. As always, I'm your host. And just a gentle reminder, I'll be exploring this research neutrally, aiming to share insights without endorsing any one viewpoint. So, let's get started. The paper we're discussing today examines the literary and philosophical contributions of Suresh Kumar Soni. Now, if you haven't heard of Soni before, that's not surprising. He's not your typical mainstream academic, publishing within elite journals or holding some fancy university chair. Instead, Soni is kind of an outsider, an independent thinker whose work lies at the crossroads of contemporary spiritual literature and big existential philosophical questions. The paper, we'll call it Soni's Literary and Philosophical Insight, draws from 6 independent book reviews to paint a picture of Soni's rising status in this space. Here's the core question the paper grapples with. What is Suresh Kumar Soni's real standing in literature? How do his peers see him, and how does his work actually impact the way we think about religion, spirituality, and the meaning of life? These questions might sound abstract, but hang on, I promise. They've got direct relevance. If you've ever wondered about the roots of your own beliefs, or whether it's possible to imagine a meaningful life beyond traditional religion, then Soni's journey might surprise, or even challenge, you. Let's summarize what Soni's reviewers are saying across these 6 books. Titles like A Religionless World, Do Souls Exist?, The Life and Living Trilogy, and others, Soni gets praised, above all, as a visionary and a reformer. He's not speaking in textbook jargon. Instead, reviewers see him as a kind of philosopher-reformer, someone who's boldly questioning, not just the specifics of any one religion, but the entire edifice of organized religion itself. He's not writing from an ivory tower. He positions himself as a common man, drawing on his own struggles, doubts, and mystical experiences. One of his key arguments comes through in A Religionless World. Soni proposes that religions, as we know them, are outdated. They're in need of deep reform, or maybe even replacement. But, and this is important, he's not coming at this from an atheistic position. It's not a Dawkins-esque teardown of faith. Not that there's anything wrong with Dawkins. Instead, Soni looks to what he calls Satya Dharma, or the religion of truth. This is less about creeds and rituals and more about ethical living, inner realization, and, well, something he frames as cosmic consciousness. So you might be thinking, all right, maybe that's inspirational, but what's unique about his literary style? His reviewers highlight 3 main features. First, Soni's writing is free-flowing, almost poetic. He barely submits to the kind of formal editorial standards you'd find in most publishing houses. Sometimes that creates a little confusion, but his defenders say that the style itself mimics the unpredictability of real life and deep introspection. Second, he fuses Eastern philosophical traditions, like Vedanta and Buddhism, with Western rationalism and personal anecdote. There's a lot of room for doubt, wonder, and self-discovery. And third, the emotional clarity. He writes as a common man, speaking honestly, sometimes even vulnerably, using metaphors like a flower of love blooming in the graveyard of holy wars, which, wow, that's evocative. Now, let's talk impact. Why should you care? For listeners, Soni's works offer a mirror to look at your own relationship with spirituality. Whether you see organized religion as comforting or constraining, Soni's challenge is to imagine a path that's more about inner truth than external belonging. And if you felt alienated by religious dogma, his call to embrace Satya Dharma or embark on self-study, that's Svadhyaya, might resonate. Plus, his trilogy, Who Are We?, The Purpose of Life, and Reality and Mystery, attempts to provide a kind of manual for, well, living in a complicated world. That's ambitious, right? Though, some critics say the practical steps are a little abstract, maybe even hard to pin down in daily life, I should mention. This makes me think of how we sometimes try to create user manuals for everything these days. My toaster, for example, has 13 pages of instructions. But existential questions, no manual included. Why don't we get a manual for being human? It's a wild thought. Peers view Soni as courageous, but not without controversy. He's compared to thinkers like Krishnamurti, Gurdjieff, and, randomly, even John Lennon. Some praise his authenticity and emotional vulnerability, while others critique the lack of structure and, let's say, editorial smoothness. So, to wrap this up, I want to stress once again that I'm presenting this research, not endorsing it. The academic world is about exploring, not declaring absolute truths. Soni's work, with all its flaws and flair, invites you to look beyond pat answers and maybe, just maybe, nudge you towards your own courageous questioning. That's all for today's episode of In Depth with Academia. Thanks for listening, keep challenging, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time. Welcome to In Depth with Academia. I'm Richard Price, CEO of academia.edu, and today I'm genuinely excited. We're exploring the fascinating work of Suresh Kumar Soni. We'll be delving into his literary and philosophical contributions, his distinctive style, the impact of his writings, and what it all might mean for you, the listener. As always, just a reminder, I'm here to present the ideas and arguments from the paper in as neutral a way as I can. This isn't an endorsement, but a friendly dive into Soni's worldview, so you get to make up your own mind. Okay, let's talk about the core question that Soni's body of work goes after. What is the role of spirituality and religion in the modern world? And, maybe even sharper, do we need to reimagine or even move beyond organized religion to find real meaning, connection, and, well, truth? Big stuff. Deep questions. Why does this matter? Well, look around, right? So much of society is shaped by frameworks, by inherited dogmas, by traditions that for many just don't seem to fit anymore. Soni's challenge is that maybe all this focus on fixed belief systems, rituals, and structures is stifling our growth. Maybe, he says, we've confused the finger pointing toward the moon with the actual moon. Soni's distinctive voice shows up in 6 key books: A Religionless World, Do Souls Exist?, Swami Satyananda, The Monk Who Gambled on the Game of Life, and the Life and Living Trilogy, which, if you're curious, consists of Who Are We?, The Purpose of Life, and Reality and Mystery. Across these, reviewed by a global mix of scholars and seekers, Soni emerges as this philosopher-reformer, a kind of common man asking awkward questions like what if the answers are found not in tradition, but in direct personal experience, and people are really responding. His books, especially A Religionless World and Do Souls Exist?, have sparked hundreds of commentaries from, honestly, every walk of life: academics, spiritual leaders, skeptics, curious readers. There's something kind of remarkable about that, isn't there? Not many authors can spark that kind of dialogue. I mean, imagine if your journal article got 100 passionate letters instead of just peer reviews. Digressing. But it's a fun thought, right? Let's look at some of Soni's key methods and style choices, because honestly, they're unusual. He's not writing in a straight academic style with rigid arguments. Instead, he uses what's called a free flow, or effortless effort, approach. Picture this: narratives that swirl, poetry that emerges mid-sentence, ideas that don't always resolve, but keep you reflecting. Sometimes this creates, well, confusion, even repetition, but the upside is this organic, meditative feel. Life is messy, thinking is non-linear, so why pretend otherwise? Philosophically, he's synthesizing. East meets West. Soni pulls from Vedantic and Buddhist traditions, throws in modern rational skepticism, and always centers the personal, introspective journey. Critically, he's not pushing dogma. Instead, his writing is full of questions and invitations to doubt. For those of us tired of gurus and pundits, well, that's refreshing. He positions himself as a seeker on the path, not waving from a podium. Now, for the big ideas. In A Religionless World, Soni says organized religion isn't just unnecessary, it's an obstacle. Instead, he proposes Satya Dharma, the religion of truth. Maybe that's a new phrase for you? It's about truth, self-realization, natural law, not about fixed creeds, dogmas, or rituals. He wants a global society grounded in direct experience, honesty, and ethical living, not inherited structures. And with Do Souls Exist? Rather than offering proof, Soni recounts his own mystical experience and then opens the floor to hundreds of responses: scientists, mystics, skeptics, laypeople. So yes, if you've ever wondered about consciousness, about something beyond the material, about what happens after death, Soni's approach is radically participatory, like throwing a philosophical party and inviting everyone. One last point: his trilogy, Who Are We?, The Purpose of Life, and Reality and Mystery, seeks to be a manual for human life. That's a dramatic claim. The idea, education, and cultural systems ignore the deepest existential questions. We need new guides for living that bring purpose, simplicity, and meaning back into the center. Let's be fair, he's not without critics. Reviewers mention the lack of academic structure, overgeneralizations, and fuzzy implementation. For some, the style's a little too mystical or open-ended, but, and this is key, almost nobody steps away unmoved or untouched by the sincerity and, the challenge to their assumptions. Whether you're left inspired or irritated, there's something here to respond to. So, what does all this mean for you? If you're wrestling with big questions about faith, about meaning, about how to live, Soni's work isn't a set of answers, but a set of provocations. It's an invitation to dig deeper, to move beyond labels, and to author your own journey. Remember, I'm not saying Soni's got it right or wrong, just that academic research, like all philosophy, gives us tools to question, to debate, to reflect. Thanks for joining me today. Stay curious, keep reading, and as always, I invite you to decide for yourself what resonates, what challenges, and yes, what's worth carrying forward. This is In Depth with Academia. See you next time.